Since the privatisation of British Rail in 1994, the UK rail network has sported among the most frequent train services in the world, with some stations at major regional centres seeing up to a dozen trains per hour, providing widespread connections for both commuters and long-distance travellers. In contrast, though, the network also hosts among the quietest, not only in Britain, but in the world, and thus in this video, we will be examining the history and reason why some of the UK's least used railway stations came to be, this listing being based on stations which have had an average annual passenger number of less than 200 passengers per year over the last 5-year period. Barry Links is situated on the main line between Dundee and Aberdeen in Scotland, and was opened on July 31, 1851 by the Dundee and Arbroath Railway to serve the nearby village of Barry, a settlement with a parish population of 2,124 people. Opened originally as Barry, the station was renamed Barry Links in 1919 in recognition of the adjacent Carnoustie Links golf course, and comprised 3 platforms, 2 main line platforms and a third platform which also doubled as a loop, as well as a small siding complex. Barry Station's primary use was to serve the Barry Budden Training Camp, a rifle range and training area opened in 1850 and was used by the Forfarshire Rifle Volunteers, the Fife and Forfar Yeomanry, the Panmure Battery of the Forfarshire Artillery Brigade, and the Royal Naval Reserve Battery. In World War I, the station served a vital role in providing connections to the camp as soldiers undertook basic training before being sent to the front lines of northern France, the Aegean and Arabia, but once the war ended, the use of this station gradually decreased throughout the remainder of the century. The main Achilles heel for Barry Links is that it's too far from any regional centre to be of efficient service, with the nearby town of Carnoustie being served by 2 stations, Gulf Street and Carnoustie, which are much more centrally located, although Gulf Street itself is among the UK's quietest stations, with a 5-year average of 181 passengers per annum. Aside from the occasional use by military personnel visiting the Barry camp, the only other traffic are golfers at the Panmure and Carnoustie Links golf courses, with ScotRail providing 4 trains per day, Monday to Saturday, the 0617 Arbroath to Dundee, the 0754 Arbroath to Glasgow Queen Street, the 1809 Glasgow Queen Street to Arbroath, and the 1847 Edinburgh to Arbroath. Situated on the line between Norwich and Great Yarmouth, Buckingham Station was opened on May 1, 1844 by the Yarmouth and Norwich Railway, and served the nearby village of Buckingham as the fastest means to get to Norwich and other onward destinations. However, Buckingham only sports a population of 460 people, and while the station is the closest to the larger town of Claxton, 1.5 miles to the southwest, access is impaired by the presence of the River Yare, requiring a dogleg diversion of 16 miles to reach it. While other nearby regional centres such as Brundall and Cantley are served by their own train stations, the Mid-Yare National Nature Reserve is located immediately west of the station, and thus services are only advertised to stop at the station on weekends, these being through passenger request. Located in the Highlands of Scotland, Kildonan Station sits on the far north line between Inverness, Thurso and Wick, and was opened originally by the Sutherland and Caithness Railway on July 28, 1874. Sited on the banks of the River Helmsdale, Kildonan serves the nearby Kildonan Lodge, and was originally built with 2 platforms that served as a passing loop, as well as a siding and 2 signal boxes. The reason for building the station came due to a sudden but short-lived gold rush in 1869, when gold was found in the River Helmsdale, but not enough to sustain a protracted mining industry similar to that of the American West. However, the station did gain notoriety when, only 10 years after its opening, a southbound fish train from Wick derailed on the curve at the station and was left in a mangled heap, killing the fireman and injuring the driver. Regardless, the station continued in its role as a transport connection for the lodge and visiting hikers exploring the local Highland countryside, although it has now been stripped down to just a single platform and a shelter. Today, ScotRail advertises that all trains on the far north line to Wick and Thurso stop at Kildonan on request, including 8 trains per day during the week and 2 trains on Sundays. Situated on the Loo branch in Cornwall, Coombe Junction was opened in 1896 and forms the end of a long, looping curve that descends from the town of Liskeard at the top of the hill to Coombe at the valley floor, before reversing and following the course of the East Loo River until it reaches the English Channel at the eponymous harbour town of Loo. Coombe, while a reversing point for passenger trains, isn't the end of the line going north, as a short spur connects with the former clay processing facilities at Moorswater, which were later converted into a cement works, but as of late 2020, the potential for future services to the site is in question, as it was reported the once weekly cement trains that ran to the site have been withdrawn. Although every train travelling between Liskeard and Loo is required to stop at Coombe Junction in order to reverse, only 4 trains per day are scheduled to pick up and drop off passengers during weekdays, the 0819 and the 1531 to Liskeard, and the 0839 and 1549 to Loo. In terms of connections, it's much easier for local residents living near Coombe Junction to undertake the half-mile walk to Liskeard Station at the top of the hill, where there are more frequent trains south to St Austell, Truro and Penzance, and north to Plymouth, Exeter, Bristol and London. Opened on July 15, 1850, Elton and Austin Station is located on the main line between Nottingham and Grantham, and was originally built by the Ambergate, Nottingham, Boston and Eastern Junction Railway. Sited just under a mile south of Austin, and less than a mile north of Elton, the cumulative population of the two villages is around 530 people, and both settlements are served by an hourly bus operation running along the A52 trunk road between Nottingham and Grantham. Therefore, the station sees only 2 trains per day, Mondays to Saturdays, the 0626 Grantham to Nottingham, and the 1710 Nottingham to Skegness. While one may consider that a station serving an airport would naturally have a healthy flow of passenger numbers, Teesside Airport, prior to the suspension of services to the station in September 2020, was only served once a week in one direction on the Tees Valley line between Darlington and Middlesbrough. The station, opened on October 3, 1971, was built to connect with the nearby Teesside International Airport, which was formerly known as RAF Middleton St George, and converted for use as a civil airport in April 1964. While, due to the proximity of the airport from the railway, it seemed logical for there to be a train connection, the terminal was over half a mile from the station and could only be accessed on foot, thereby making it a somewhat unattractive alternative to car travel. This, combined with a sharp decline in passenger numbers at the airport following the 2008 financial crisis, as well as the loss of the popular British Midlands service to London Heathrow in March 2009, meant that by 2019 the station's attendance, what little there was, had plummeted. From the hourly service it once received under British Rail, subsequent private franchises have cut down the number of trains operating to the station year on year, until eventually it only had 1 service a week operating on a Sunday, the 12:05 Hartlepool to Darlington. Haven House is located on the former Thursby to Skegness branch of the wider East Lincolnshire Railway, and was opened on July 28, 1873, to serve the various farms that were peppered across the surrounding region, being used more as a goods station in order to transport local produce, including potatoes, hay, corn and straw, to markets in Boston, Grantham, Nottingham, Skegness and London, while also bringing in supplies such as seeds and manure. Originally named Croft Bank, the station always demonstrated low passenger numbers, with the nearest large settlement being Wainfleet All Saints, which is served by its own train station. Today, the station mainly provides connections for passengers visiting the nearby Gibraltar Point National Nature Reserve on the Lincolnshire coast, and is served by 4 trains per day, Mondays to Saturdays, the 7:15 and 17:36 Skegness to Nottingham services, and the 7:55 and 17:51 Nottingham to Skegness services. Located at the heart of the industrial Mersey estuary, StanleyThornton was opened on December 23, 1940 by the Great Western Railway and London Midland and Scottish Railway on the Birkenhead joint line between Birkenhead and Warrington Bank Quay, and was hastily created to serve the Shell Thornton Aero Engine Laboratory during World War II, this facility being a main developer of fuels and oils being used by the Royal Air Force. Aside from the still present oil refineries both north and south of the line, the station has no other form of traffic to serve, with the nearby town of Elton having its own dedicated station, while the larger Ellesmere Port is the terminus of the Merseyrail commuter network, with direct connections to the centre of Liverpool. Despite calls for the station to be closed under the Beeching Acts though, StanleyThornton continues to be served by northern trains travelling between Ellesmere Port, Warrington and Manchester Victoria, with 2 trains stopping every weekday. The 1803 Leeds to Ellesmere Port, and the 1829 Ellesmere Port to Liverpool Lime Street via Warrington. Reddish South Station is located in the suburbs of Stockport near Manchester, and was opened in October 1845 by the Manchester and Birmingham Railway, and originally sported 4 platforms as part of the quadruple-track main line between Stockport and Huddersfield, being once one of the main stations serving the Manchester area, prior to the expansion of the London and North Western Railway's terminal at Store Street, later London Road, and now Manchester Piccadilly, housing an engine shed and a wider yard complex with several goods tracks. In May 1882, the facilities at London Road were expanded greatly, and with the provision of a direct main line between Stockport and Manchester via Levenshulme and Longsight, express services at Reddish South quickly diminished, but the line and station remained open for use by commuter trains. Under the Beeching Acts of the 1960s, the line through Reddish South was slated for closure, but saw a reprieve as other routes avoiding the Manchester area were removed instead, although passenger numbers continued to drop. While the line has become a vital freight link between Crewe and Leeds, the intermediate stations on the route, Reddish South and the nearby Denton, were given a token service of just 1 train per week on a Saturday morning, the 0950 to Stalybridge. Meanwhile, Denton Station, opened in 1882 and located approximately 2 miles north of Reddish South, based on its 5-year average usership, is now the quietest station on the UK rail network, with an average of 85 passengers using the station between 2015 and 2020, while being served by only 1 train per week, the 0956 on a Saturday morning between Stockport and Stalybridge. For the future, it's currently unclear whether these low-usage stations will continue to see passengers in the aftermath of the 2020 outbreak and resultant rail market slump, as is the case of Teesside Airport, which has had its service suspended with no news as to a possible reinstatement. For the time being, though, the presence of these many quirky stops and halts, ones which often slip by unnoticed, serve to create an interesting little novelty in the makeup of Britain's railway network.